They denied them at the doorway where everyone could see, because denial in public does two things at once. It humiliates the family and reassures the crowd that the gate is still guarded. The ballroom at the Fairmont Crescent buzzed with polished laughter and champagne flutes, the kind of charity gala where the lights are warm enough to make money look generous. A string quartet played near the stage. Volunteers in matching black dresses held clipboards like passports. On the wall behind the check-in table, a banner read Crescent Children's Fundraiser in elegant gold letters. Malik and Renee Johnson arrived quietly, right on time. Malik wore a dark suit that fit him well, not flashy, just clean. Renee wore a navy dress and a simple necklace, her hair pinned back. Between them were their two children, Jordan, 14, tall and shy with a tie he kept adjusting, and Ava, 10, clutching a small purse like it held bravery. They didn't come for cameras. They came because they'd been invited, because Malik's company had donated to the fundraiser, and because Renee believed that if you had the ability to support kids in the city, you did it without expecting applause. At the entrance, a volunteer looked up, smiled automatically, then paused when her eyes landed on their faces. Her smile shifted into something thinner. She glanced down at the printed guest list, then up again, like the list must be wrong. Name? She asked, voice neutral. Johnson, Malik said. Malik Johnson. We should be on the sponsor list. The volunteer's brows knit. She scanned the pages slowly, too slowly. I'm not seeing you, she said, still not looking at him directly. Renee kept her tone polite. We are SVPD. We have the confirmation email. The volunteer gave a tight smile. Sometimes the system doesn't update. Are you sure you're in the right room? Malik blinked once. Yes. Another volunteer, a white man in a bow tie, stepped closer as if he sensed a problem. What's going on? He asked. The first volunteer lowered her voice, but not enough. They're not on the list. The bow tie volunteer looked Malik up and down, then said, This is a closed event. Seats are assigned. If you didn't purchase tickets through the proper channel, you can't just walk in. Malik's jaw tightened. We didn't just walk in. We're sponsors. The bow tie volunteer nodded slowly like he was humoring a lie. Sir, we have a lot of people trying to get in tonight. If you're not on the list, you'll need to step aside. Step aside. The polite way of saying you don't belong. Jordan's shoulders stiffened. Ava's eyes widened, confused and embarrassed. Renee put a hand lightly on Ava's back, steadying her without making a show of it. Malik felt heat rise in his chest, but he forced it down. He had learned, like so many black men learn, that anger becomes a weapon in the hands of the people accusing you. If he raised his voice, they would call him aggressive. If he stayed calm, they would treat him as dismissible. Either way, they were writing the story. So Malik did what he always did when someone tried to erase him. He reached for proof. He pulled out his phone and opened the email. Here, he said, holding it toward them. Confirmation. Sponsored table, 4 seats. The volunteer barely glanced. We can't verify emails at the door, she said quickly. People fake those. Renee stared. People fake RSVP confirmations? The bow tie volunteer's tone sharpened. Ma'am, please don't make this difficult. Ava whispered. Mom, can we go home? Renee's throat tightened. She forced a smile for her daughter. Not yet, baby. Malik looked at the volunteer and said, quiet but clear, Please call the event coordinator. The bow tie volunteer shook his head. They're busy. We're doing check-in. Malik nodded slowly. Then call the sponsor liaison. The volunteer frowned. We don't have time for... Malik didn't move. He wasn't blocking anyone. He wasn't shouting. He was simply standing where he had every right to stand. I'll wait, he said. That's when the bow tie volunteer tried to use the crowd against him. He raised his voice slightly and said, Sir, you're holding up the line. Heads turned. A few guests behind them sighed. Someone muttered, Unbelievable. Malik could feel the pressure of eyes, the silent social force that tries to make you shrink so everyone else can stay comfortable. Renee leaned in close to Malik and whispered, They're doing this because we're black. Malik's jaw tightened. I know. Jordan stood very still, cheeks burning. He hated scenes. He hated being watched. He hated that his parents had done everything right, dressed right, arrived right, donated, RSVP'd, and still had to prove they belonged. Malik took a breath and said, "Please get a manager." The bow-tie volunteer's smile turned brittle. "Security can escort you out if you refuse to step aside." Renee's eyes flashed. "Escort us out? For what?" "For trespassing," he said, as if the word belonged in a ballroom. That was the moment the air shifted, because nearby, a woman in a silver gown, white, early 60s, elegant, had paused at the edge of the line. She wasn't just any guest. Her presence changed the rhythm around her. People glanced at her with recognition. She wore a small sponsor pin, and she moved like someone used to being listened to. Her name was Evelyn Grant, and she was the event's largest sponsor. Evelyn had been walking toward the check-in table to greet the coordinator when she heard the word trespassing. She looked toward the commotion and saw a black family standing quietly while volunteers leaned toward them with suspicion. Then she saw Malik's face. Evelyn's expression changed, recognition arriving like a tide. "Malik," she said, voice cutting through the noise. Malik turned, surprised. "Ms. Grant?" Evelyn stepped forward quickly, eyes warm now. "It is you. I thought that was you." The volunteers froze. The bow-tie man's posture shifted instantly, like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Evelyn looked at Malik's children. "And these must be Jordan and Ava," she said gently. Jordan blinked, stunned. Ava clutched her purse tighter. Renee stared. "You know our kids," Evelyn smiled. "I do. Malik, you installed the security system at my foundation office 2 years ago after that break-in attempt. You came yourself at midnight when the alarm wouldn't stop triggering and my staff couldn't work. You refused to charge the emergency fee because you said, 'Kids need the money more than I do.'" I never forgot that. Malik's throat tightened slightly. He remembered the night. He remembered Evelyn being calm and grateful while her staff panicked. He remembered her writing a donation check the next morning and telling him, "People who show up like that deserve to be seen." Evelyn turned to the volunteers, and the warmth in her eyes vanished. "Why are you stopping them?" the first volunteer stammered. "They're not on the list." Evelyn's voice went colder. "They're sponsors." The bow-tie volunteer tried to smile. "Ma'am, we didn't realize—" Evelyn cut him off. "No, you didn't recognize them. That's different." Silence. A few guests nearby shifted uncomfortably. The shame in the air wasn't loud, but it was thick. Evelyn looked at Malik. "You are at my sponsor table," she said, clear enough for the line to hear. "I requested your family personally." Malik didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just nodded once. "Thank you." Evelyn turned back to the check-in table. "Where is the coordinator?" The volunteer scrambled. Someone reached for a radio. The bow-tie man suddenly became helpful. "We can add them." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "They were already added. You just didn't look." She leaned closer to the volunteer's guest list and flipped pages with practiced impatience. Her finger landed on a line. "There," she said, tapping. "Johnson Malik, table 3, 4 seats." The volunteer went pale. Evelyn looked up. "So tell me why you said they weren't on the list." The volunteer's mouth opened, then closed. She had no answer that could survive in public. Evelyn straightened and addressed the line behind Malik. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice carrying, "thank you for your patience. The Johnson family is exactly where they belong." A few people murmured agreement. Others looked down, embarrassed. Evelyn turned to Malik and Renee, her voice softening again. "Come with me." She walked them into the ballroom like a declaration. The children's faces shifted as they passed the doorway that had just tried to reject them. Jordan lifted his chin slightly. Ava's grip loosened. Renee's eyes were wet, but she kept her expression calm. Malik felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that they were no longer being blocked. Anger that the only reason the door opened was because a powerful white sponsor validated them. As they crossed the ballroom, people looked at them differently now. Some smiled too hard. Some nodded politely. Some avoided eye contact. The same room that had been ready to accept their exclusion now had to accept their presence. And that adjustment revealed more than any speech could. At table 3, there was a place card: Malik Johnson, Renee Johnson, Jordan, Ava. The names were printed beautifully, as if the paper could erase what happened at the door. Evelyn pulled out a chair for Ava and said, "I'm glad you came." Ava whispered, "They said we couldn't." Evelyn's face tightened with quiet anger. "I know, and they were wrong." Across the room, the coordinator rushed over, breathless. "Ms. Grant, I'm so sorry. There was a mix-up." Evelyn didn't let her finish. "It wasn't a mix-up. It was assumption." The coordinator went pale. "We—" Evelyn's voice was firm but controlled. "You will address your volunteers, and you will apologize to this family." The coordinator swallowed. "Yes, of course." She turned to Malik and Renee, voice shaking. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I sincerely apologize. That should not have happened." Renee nodded politely. Malik said nothing. His silence was not rude, it was honest. The gala continued. Speeches began. Donor praise. A video montage of children the fund helped. Applause that made people feel good about themselves. But Malik couldn't fully relax. He watched the room with new eyes. He noticed how quickly people's faces changed when Evelyn sat down at their table. How the same guests who would have walked past them earlier now found reasons to say hello. A man in a tux approached with a glass of wine and said, "Malik, right? Great to meet you. Evelyn speaks highly of you." Malik nodded. "Nice to meet you." The man smiled too brightly. "What line of work are you in?" Renee answered calmly. "He owns a security systems company." The man blinked, surprised. "Oh, wow, impressive." Jordan watched and learned. Not bitterness, clarity. He was learning how the world works in rooms like this. Later, during the dinner course, Evelyn leaned toward Malik and said quietly, "I'm sorry about the door." Malik kept his voice low. "It happens." Evelyn's eyes sharpened. "It shouldn't." Malik nodded. "It won't change until people care before they recognize a name." Evelyn exhaled. "You're right." Renee finally spoke, voice controlled. "They threatened security." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Who?" Renee nodded toward the entrance. "The man in the bow tie." Evelyn's gaze hardened. "I'll handle it." And she did, not with yelling, with power. The kind of power that moved quietly but left consequences. Before the night ended, Evelyn spoke to the coordinator again. The bow tie volunteer was reassigned away from the entrance. The check-in team received new instructions. Verify every RSVP properly. No assumptions, no step aside. It sounded like procedure. Everyone in that room knew it was correction. When the gala ended, Malik and Renee walked out with their children, and the cool night air hit their faces like relief. In the parking lot, Jordan finally spoke, voice tight. "Dad, if Ms. Grant hadn't been there, would they have made us leave?" Malik paused. He didn't lie to his son. He couldn't afford to. "Yes," he said quietly. Jordan swallowed, eyes shining with anger he didn't know where to put. "That's messed up." Renee put an arm around her son's shoulders. "Yes," she said. "It is." Ava looked up at Malik. "But we did belong, right?" Malik crouched slightly so he could meet her eyes. "Yes," he said. "We belonged before she recognized us. We belonged even when they tried to pretend we didn't." Ava nodded slowly, holding that like a truth she would need later. On the drive home, Malik didn't talk much. Renee watched him and said softly, "You okay?" Malik exhaled. "I'm tired." Renee nodded. "Me too." Malik's voice was quiet. "I hate that it took a sponsor to open a door that was already ours." Renee looked out the window, eyes wet. "Then we make sure our kids learn this. Never let someone else decide your belonging." Malik nodded once. "Yeah." And that was the ending. They denied the black family a seat because they thought the entrance belonged to their assumptions, because they believed they could quietly erase a family that didn't fit their mental picture of sponsor. Until the event's sponsor recognized them, and suddenly the room had to face what it had been willing to accept: exclusion, dressed as policy.